Hello and a very warm welcome to Hockenheim for the fourth race of the International GT Open season, which closes out the second round of the year. 60 minutes ahead of us around the 4.5 kilometre challenge of the Hockenheim circuit, the home of the German Grand Prix. And this is the second of 7 stops around some of Europe's finest circuits. It's a very warm welcome from myself, Ben Evans, as you join us on a beautiful afternoon here just south of Frankfurt with the sun in the sky, the rain that was forecast earlier in the week fortunately staying away, and we have got a field of 23 supercars ready to take to the circuit any moment for what promises to be an absolutely thrilling fourth race of the International GT Open season, not least because in qualifying this morning we had the unbelievably close front row between Norbert Siedler and his teammate for Emil Frey Racing, Giacomo Altoe. The pair of them separated by just a few thousandths of a second. The cars so evenly matched throughout the course of qualifying. And it is the second place car of Albert Costa and Giacomo Altoe which leads the championship coming into today's race. Yesterday, however, was a triumph for this car, the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren of Andres Saravia and Fran Rueda, and it is Saravia who will be starting the race. There's Giacomo Altoe, and here's Emil Frey Racing Lamborghini. And Emil Frey Racing, they had their 2 cars, had a winner piece at the season opener in Paul Ricard. And the smart money would suggest that they've got a very good opportunity of taking victory this afternoon, as we are in car with the pole sitter, Norbert Siedler, and the car that he shares with Michael Grenier. And as the cars out of the pit lane, the grid filling up with the teams and VIPs and visitors to the International GT Open this weekend. Bibendium from Michelin, of course, making an appearance. This is the AM class pole sitter, Martin Conrad, in the HTP Motorsport. Mercedes there is the Michelin man himself. All the mechanics getting into position. We're pleased to see on the grid today, if you joined us yesterday, the Raton by Target Lamborghini Huracan of Raffaele Gianmaria and Giotong Liang, after Giotong Liang had a big coming together with Alessio Rivera in the Antonelli Motorsport Mercedes, and Rivera and his co-pilot Daniel Zampieri also on the grid today. So there's 2 cars that were very, very badly damaged in yesterday's race. The mechanics working all through the night to get them prepared, and they are going to be back out on track. There is Russell Ward, 3rd among the Pro-Am qualifiers in the HTP Winwood Racing Mercedes, but it's Chiva who took Pro-Am pole position, 5th overall on the grid. May have even been a little bit more as Enrique Chavez moves into place in the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren that he shares with Martin Kodrich. So a lot of variety at the front of the field. We've got the 2 Lamborghinis on the front row. 3rd on the grid is the Optima Motorsport Aston Martin of Darren Turner, and that car, one could argue, would have been on pole position but for the fact that Turner got held up for a couple of fractions of a second behind the Tempesta Racing Ferrari of Chiva on his best lap of the qualifying session, and that all the same was enough to give Turner 3rd on the grid alongside the McLaren of Chavez in 4th, and then Chiva in 5th in the Tempesta Ferrari. And though that quintet were really the class of the field throughout the course of the qualifying session, the car of Russell Ward that he shares with Indy Donja slipping into position. Of course, there's the 3 classes in the GT Open. There is the main class, there is the, so we have a look at Tristan Brandt, Michelin starred chef. We've got the main pro class, who would expect to fight for the overall victory, the Pro-Am class, which is going to be very interesting because yesterday it was mainly the pros in the Pro-Am class who qualified and started. And And then the AM class, which in qualifying was headed by Martin Conrad. Looking on the grid there at the can't-finish runner-up yesterday and Pro-Am class winners, Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin. Here, though, is Norbert Seidler, the pole sitter in the Emil Frey Racing Lamborghini. Seidler taking that pole position by the slenderest of margins from teammate Giacomo Altoe, and be willing to wager quite a large sum of money that there has been a conversation in the trailer during lunch break basically saying, whatever you do, do not collide in the early stages. Here then is the third place car, the Optima Motorsport Aston Martin of Darren Turner. Turner stepping into the car this weekend, works Aston Martin driver. Had to work hard in yesterday's race alongside Ollie Wilkinson. But they may well fancy their chances of challenging for a podium this afternoon. Fourth then for Enrique Chavez in the first of the three Teo Martin Motorsport McLarens. Chavez and Kodrich, really high-performing, high-paced duo. They could challenge. This is the Tempesta Racing Ferrari of Edward Cheever and Christopher Froggatt, Pro-Am pole sitter. And Cheever will look to try and stretch the field in the early stages to give Froggatt a good advantage to take on. Nicholas Pola then lines up in sixth in the sole remaining Lazarus Lamborghini for this weekend, alongside Nicola De Marco, after the sister car of Fabio Anidi was damaged in a qualifying crash yesterday and had to be withdrawn from the event. Seventh on the grid, Rafael Gia Maria in the Raton Racing by Target, car that he shares with Jiatong Liang, and this is the car that was damaged in that huge accident with Alessio Rivera yesterday. Fabrizio Crostani in eighth in the SPS Automotive Mercedes had his adventures in qualifying this morning. He had a coming together with Marcello Hahn, which forced Crostani to pit him for a new tyre after cutting a tyre and picking up a puncture. So that rather interrupted his run. Federico Leo, 2012 International GT Open champion, lines up in ninth place in the Ombra Racing Lamborghini, and then completing the top 10, it is Kang Ling, second in the Pro-Am class in the Vincenzo Sospiri Racing Lamborghini. So the grid beginning to be cleared. 6-minute race ahead of us. We've got, of course, the mandatory pit stops. As here is a look back at what happened yesterday, and it was Matt Griffin who got the jump on Tom Onslow Cole as they charged into turn one. And as Griffin looked to lead the way, this was the instant we're talking about. Huge contact between Liang and Rivera. That brought out the safety car. Post-safety car, plenty of battling throughout the field. Not least between Albert Costa and Michael Grenier in the Emil Frey Racing Lamborghinis. This was the move that sided the race. Andres Saravia to the inside of Duncan Cameron late on. And then Giacomo Altoe having a charge past Enrique Chavez. Altoe picking up a penalty for his troubles. So it was a victory for Fran Rader and Andres Saravia ahead of Matt Griffin and Duncan Cameron, Valentin Pierberg and Tom Onslow Cole. So celebration for Teo Martin Motorsport, their first win of the season. It's the 1 minute board shown on the grid. We're moments away from the fourth race of the International GT Open season in Hockenheim, and here is how they are going to line up then. An all Emil Frey Racing front row, Norbert Seidler and Giacomo Altoe. Row 2 is Darren Turner and Enrique Chavez. Row 3 of the grid, Edward Cheever and Nicholas Pola. Cheever, the Pro-Am pole sitter. Rafael Gia Maria and Fabrizio Crostani, a very experienced fourth row. The top 10 completed then by Federico Leo and Kang Ling. Row 6, Andres Saravia, race 1 winner and AM class pole sitter Martin Conrad. Row 7, Daniel Zampieri and Giuseppe Cipriani in 2 of the Antonelli Motorsport Mercedes. Russell Ward and Duncan Cameron on row 8. Row 9, John Schaffner, and the Get Speed Racing Mercedes and Christoph Lenz. The top 20 completed by Kenny Harble and Valentin Pierberg, with Luis Silva and Marcello Hahn. And then Davide Roda completing the field after Davide, unfortunately, brought out the red flag in qualifying earlier, just nudging the tyres over at the Sachs curve. So the cars waved off onto their green flag lap. Now, when we do go racing, they have got the mandatory pit stop that comes between the 24th and 36th minute of the race. And based on yesterday's pace, that gives a 6 to 7 lap strategy overlap that the teams can play with. What we don't know, of course, is what the teams have done with their allocation of Michelin tyres for the weekend, because they all run on the controlled compound Michelin tyre. They all get a set number of tyres for each race weekend, and some of the teams use them in qualifying to get as elevated a grid position as possible. Others of them will wait until the racing and try to take advantage then. Sondra Saravia peeling through turn 2 as Bernd Schneider, German racing legend, here to keep an eye on things this weekend on behalf of Mercedes. And the German mark very, very well represented throughout the field. The cars swinging through the Parabolica, turn 5 on towards turn 6. This version of the Hockenheim circuit in use since 2002. But it's the first ever visit to the track for the International GT Open. And we saw yesterday that there was incredible parity amongst the cars around the circuit. And compared to the first weekend of the season at Paul Ricard, where you could see there were distinct sections of the circuit which suited different marks of car, that's not really been the case here at Hockenheim this weekend. They've all run very closely together, but there have been scant few opportunities for one car to really dominate another on any part of the circuit. So it shows the balance of performance is working very well, and it has led to some very, very close racing. So there is the Get Speed Racing Mercedes of John Schaffner and Janine Hill entering the championship for the first time this weekend, and they were on the AM class podium yesterday. Michael Grenier watches Fernando Frey Racing pit box as the team's cars beginning to form up in formation as they head in towards the Sachs curve now behind the pace car. They make a fantastic sight, and then there is going to be the percussive blast when the race gets underway as they accelerate through to the rolling start. 60 minutes of action to look forward to here in Hockenheim. Ollie Wilkinson watching, see if Darren Turner can maybe get the jump in the Aston Martin in the early stages, as it is Norbert Siedler who paces the field. As they come through turn 16, they'll see the red lights on the gantry. They will wait for those lights to change. When they do, we will be underway. Here we go then, as it is Norbert Siedler who paces the field. The red lights change now, and Siedler went away a little bit hot out of turn 16, you could argue, so the field reasonably spread as they head through the first corner, and it might be Darren Turner will take advantage here from Giacomo Altoe, who ran very wide, as does Valentin Pierberg up to the braking zone at turn 2. Enrique Chavez also strongly away, but no change, it would appear, amongst the top 4 or 5 positions as the pack head on to the back stretch for the first time. Although Darren Turner's going to lose out here to both Chiva and Chavez as they're 3 wide into the Parabolica. We are in car with Edward Chiva, who has just elevated himself up into 3rd place. So Siedler leads, Altoe is 2nd. Who is going to be 3rd? It's all very congested into the hairpin. Fortunately, no contact. And it would appear as if it is Chiva who's up to 3rd, but Enrique Chavez looking to force the issue. Cristani's then got ahead of Darren Turner in towards turn 8, and still Chavez challenging the Ferrari, which runs wide, and Chiva might lose out more here. He just dinks into Fabrizio Crestani as he rejoins track. We've got John Schaffner in the Get Speed Mercedes, who spun around at the rear of the field. He should rejoin without any drama. But lots of jostling behind as Cheever's lost out to Darren Turner, but has rejoined in front of Fabrizio Crestani. So the order is Seidler from Altoe, Enrique Chavez, then Darren Turner, Cheever in 5th, Crestani 6th from Raffaele Gianmaria and Nicholas Pola. Back in car with Cheever as Darren Turner looks to get onto terms with the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren as they sprint through on towards turn 1. Ride the curb and out towards the trees before they get on the brakes for turn 2, and that will swing them back across through turns 3 and 4 on towards turn 5. Unfortunately, problems there for Davide Roda, so he is into the pit lane. As already Norbert Seidler building up a near enough 2-second advantage over Giacomo Altoe, who has then got the rest of the field queuing up behind him. Look there from Martin Conrad. He's to the inside of Daniel Zampieri. Zampieri, though, in the Antonelli Motorsport Mercedes, looks to fight back as they run on towards turn 7, side by side. Zampieri very rarely gives a quarter, but he is unable to fend off Conrad, at least on the way into turn 8. As they come out, Zampieri should play for the switchback. He can't quite execute it, though. And he still continues to pursue Conrad as they head on down towards turn 11. Bobbing and weaving, Andres Saravia watching just in behind that battle as well. And if they fight with each other too hard, they will let the front of the field begin to run away a little bit. Back in car with Cheever. We've got this queue beginning to form behind Giacomo Altoe, which is allowing the race leader Norbert Seidler to begin to build a little bit of a buffer. As the field thunder through to complete the second lap of the race. It's still Zampieri pressurising Martin Conrad into turn 1. Be hoping that Conrad runs out wide. He doesn't. As they head up to the braking zone at turn 2. Meanwhile, Enrique Chavez looking to try, if he can, to get onto terms with Giacomo Altoe. That is the aim, the fight for second and third. Race leader Seidler, though, takes another couple of tenths of a second out of the group behind, which is beginning to form up. It's quite a tight train. We've got the Lamborghini ahead of the McLaren, then the Aston Martin, Ferrari and Mercedes, all running together. Meanwhile, Zampieri under a little bit of pressure here from Andres Saravia. Saravia looks to challenge. Zampieri tries to chop him off through turn 7. Back in car with Cheever, and they're all queuing up behind Altoe at the moment. Ferrari gets the power down and down through a couple of the gears into turn 11. They're all queuing up this train of supercars, squabbling over second position. This is what we were talking about in the formation lap, that the gaps in yesterday's race remained very, very slender. That's proving to be the case once more. So out of the last corner towards turn 1. Norbert Seidler just ahead of Giacomo Altoe, Enrique Chavez, Darren Turner and the rest of them. As Raffaele Gianmaria tries to line up a move on Fabrizio Crestani. Nicholas Pola at the tail of that train, setting the fastest lap of the race. But the lead for Seidler now 2.9 seconds. And the Emil Frey Racing team can play a nice strategic game here, because if they want, they can just keep Altoe as the cork in the bottle, allow Norbert Seidler to begin to stretch his legs over the rest of the field. The rest of them all queuing up all the way up to and including Kang Ling in 9th place. Meanwhile, Fabrizio Crestani under a little bit of pressure from Raffaele Gianmaria. Gianmaria in turn being prodded along by Nicholas Pola. And he's got Kang Ling as well, filling his mirrors. There is the Vincenzo Spiri Racing Lamborghini. And then there's a slight little bit of fresh air before you get to Federico Leo and then Martin Conrad. Back in car with Chiva, and it is much the same view for him he's had really throughout the course of the race, which is the tail of Darren Turner's car. As the field sprint through, this is to start the 5th lap of the race. All of them taking a fairly liberal approach to the track limits over at turn 1, as Norbert Siedler now sets the fast lap of the race. His lead, 2.8 seconds. But Giacomo Autoe has just set the fastest first sector of anybody and was 4 tenths quicker, in fact, than Norbert Siedler. So here is Siedler, the heat haze shimmering off the Emil Frey Racing Lamborghini. The rest of the field streaming along behind them. And at the moment, we've got the top 16 opening covered by some 12 seconds. So if there were to be a safety car, and once the pit handicaps play through, then these slender gaps start to make the task on the drivers either a bit more straightforward or very tough later on in the race. Listening to Chiva just working the gears of the Ferrari. But at the moment, don't know if content's the right word, but he's got no option but to just follow in behind Darren Turner, hope that Turner makes an error. Solly Wilkinson waiting to take over from Turner midway through the race. And Darren Turner on this last lap has just dropped back a little bit from Enrique Chavez. And it's because Giacomo Autoe has just elevated his pace slightly. He's taking the McLaren with him, but then there's a little bit of daylight to the Aston Martin, as Giacomo Autoe sets the fastest lap of the race on that occasion, the 1:39.7. So the Emil Frey Racing Lamborghinis really are the ones to watch. Here's Federico Leo, who is now part of that leading train of cars. As is Raffaele Gianmaria in 7th place, the black and green Lamborghini, the Raton by Target car. In the AM class, it's still Martin Conrad from Giuseppe Cipriani, and then Luis Silva. The Pro-Am class is currently Chiva from Ling and Ward. And we are under 15 minutes away from the pit window opening. 10 minutes the race already elapsed. And Chiva not quite as close to Darren Turner as he was a lap ago, but remember, some of this may be slightly deliberate. They might just be dropping back a little bit, let the airflow into the car be a little bit clearer, a little bit stronger. That will help keep all the temperatures down if they need to manage the temperatures, knowing that ideally they'll be able to close those gaps back up again fairly rapidly. Giacomo Autoe having another very good lap relative to Siedler, the race leader, and Autoe sets the fast lap of the race again at 1:39.6. But the top 4 cars all in the 1:39 second bracket on that last lap. So the pace just steadily elevating as the cars get a little bit lighter as the fuel loads burn off. And that's also serving to begin to stretch the field a little bit. Here's race 1 winner, Ondra Saravia, currently in 13th position in the Teo Marti Motorsport McLaren. But that 13th place for Saravia is currently 11.6 seconds adrift of the race leader. So the Emil Frey Racing Lamborghinis, they're separated by a fraction over 2 seconds. Probably be reasonably content with that. And the ability to control the race as we look at Norbert Siedler in full flight. You get the sense of just how stiffly sprung these GT3 cars are. tension being pushed through the chassis. So there's Martin Conrad, leader of the AM class, 11th position overall for Conrad. It's only 8.9 seconds back from the race leader as we go in-car with Cheever once more. And the gap to Darren Turner, pretty much what it was a lap ago. As he accelerates on out of the Sachs curve, pursuing the Aston Martin, then the McLaren. It's race leader Norbert Seidler completes lap 7. Again, fractionally quicker was teammate Giacomo Altoe, but not to the extent that's going to cause Seidler any particular concern. And already some of these teams might be starting to think a little bit about strategy. Do you pit early in the pit window, get these cars out of the traffic, or are you content with the pace they're running at and just have to live with it? Meanwhile, Valentin Pierberg hot into the hairpin, but not as hot as Marcello Hahn into the side of Christoph Lenz. It's where Hahn tangled with Fabrizio Crestani in qualifying earlier. And Lenz smokes up the Michelin tires as he gets back into the action. There's the Lazarus Lamborghini of Nicolas Pola. And Pola still in amongst this leading group as Darren Turner setting the fast lap of the race last time around. So Turner immediately back onto turn with Enrique Chavez. But the problem for Turner is where can he find a way past the McLaren? And then what can he do about the Lamborghinis in front of him, because Chavez has dropped back a little bit from Giacomo Altoe over the course of this lap, and for the first time there is daylight from second to third place. So here's another look at the start of the race, and what the angle doesn't quite show is that Seidler was well up to speed by the time that the lights changed. That meant there wasn't too much bunching of the pack into turn 1. There you see it from the other angle. And so they were pretty much as they qualified through the first corner. But Seidler knew exactly what he needed to do and was able to pull the move off with aplomb. So Seidler 2.2 seconds clear of Giacomo Altoe. Altoe now a second clear of Enrique Chavez in third place. So the front runners all blast through the parabolica at turn 5 on towards the hairpin at turn 6. Getting on the brakes into the hairpin now. Darren Turner trying to start to ask some questions of the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren. It's Martin Kodrich watching the progress of the car. Nothing you can do to particularly influence things at the moment. But Kodrich, who was spectacular in Paul Ricard, I'm sure will be chomping at the bit to get behind the wheel and look to push hard a little bit later on the race. Meanwhile, Darren Turner, headlights ablaze in the Aston Martin, trying to force the mistake from Enrique Chavez at the moment, though Chavez not thinking about leaping out of the way. Then we've got the Brace Lamborghinis, Gio Maria and Nicolas Pola together. They're just clear of Kang Ling as well. There's Edward Cheever watching the efforts of Darren Turner to overhaul the McLaren. Cheever, though, will be quite content to run like this. It gives Chris Froggatt a reasonably decent buffer to take over in the Pro-Am class. And that's what they'll be looking to do. Just over a quarter of the way through the race. And after a frenetic first lap, not many changes in the order so far as Giacomo Altoe sets fast lap. But this is Darren Turner's best run. Now, can he use that momentum to get in the tow behind Enrique Chavez? Look to challenge into the hairpin. Chavez determined to cover the inside line. He's going to force Turner to go early and look to the outside. Chavez then will try to block out the apex, slowing the pace of the Aston Martin, and Turner unable to get the switch back, so he stays where he is in fourth position. That's good defensive driving from the McLaren, as the Aston Martin was well set up. He couldn't get the cut back. of course, as they fight, it does just release Giacomo Otoe in second place to a little bit of clear air, and even more clear air for the race leader, Norbert Seidler. So for the Emil Frey Racing team, opportunity maybe to even score a 1-2, depending on how the rest of the afternoon pans out. Well, of course, that is presuming they have a smooth pit stop. It's presuming that we don't have an ill-timed safety car. Out of turn 16 to the end of lap 10 for this leading group of cars. You can see all those bits of rubber that have been laid down just to the periphery of the racing line. Those are the marbles that have come off the Michelin tyre. The track really rubbering in over the course of the weekend. This is the fight, meanwhile, for 12th, 13th and 14th between Daniel Zampieri, the Antonelli Motorsport Mercedes, ahead of Andres Saravia in the McLaren, and then Russell Ward in the XP Motorsport Winwood Racing Mercedes. Race leader Norbert Seidler on the brakes into the hairpin. It's a little bit of a challenge there from Kang Ling, contemplating the move on Nicholas Pola, couldn't quite do it. Fabrizio Crestani nestled into 6th. He is another driver who's not really been able to make much progress since the first lap of the race. And all the while, the top 9 cars are only separated by 8 seconds, so the field hasn't really spread itself out at all, which is going to make things fascinating a little bit later on. Particularly as in the Pro-Am class, got a lot of pro drivers who will be taking over. They've got some slightly more substantial gaps to make up as Fran Rueda readies himself in the Toyota Motorsport pit box to take over from Andres Saravia. It's only going to be really 2 more laps before the pit window opens as Otoe and Seidler fly in formation. Otoe pursuing his teammate, with then Enrique Chavez having just seen off that challenge from Darren Turner. We've got one car. Marcello Hahn has got his team manager summoned to race control with immediate effect. That is in relation to the incident up at the hairpin, I would imagine. Martin Kodrich. So considering getting ready, but I'd imagine yesterday's race winners, Andres Saravia, who's not really been able to overhaul Daniel Zampieri, and they've lost a little bit of ground now to the leading group. They're currently 15, 16 seconds back from the race leader, so they might elect to make a relatively early pit stop, try and get a little bit of clear air and a chance to put in some fast laps. As we approach 1/3 race distance, Norbert Seidler leads the way, as he has done ever since the lights changed, from teammate Giacomo Otoe. Enrique Chavez in 3rd, 4th Darren Turner, 5th Edward Cheever, 6th Fabrizio Crestani, 7th Raffaele Giammaria, 8th is Nicholas Pola, 9th to Kang Ling, and 10th Federico Leo. The Pro-Am podium as it stands is Cheever from Ling and Russell Ward, and the Am class is Martin Conrad from Giuseppe Cipriani and John Schaffner. Kang Ling, Vincenzo Spiri Racing, Lamborghini pursuing the Team Lazarus car of Nicholas Pola. He's got Nicola Di Marco waiting to take over from him. Lots of pit wall conferences, analysis of timing screens. That's Vincenzo Spiri just on the left of your picture, of course, a very, very fine racing driver in his own right. One-time front row qualifier at the Indianapolis 500, going back a few years ago, as the leading 6 cars, all still reasonably closely bunched as a group. Now, whether or not the Emil Frey Racing team are running to a target lap time or not, we will find out later, but they are very, very consistently lapping in the 1:39.7 bracket. As Raffaele Gianmaria is just slipping into a little bit of clear air. He's shaken off Nicolas Pola, but he's not quite able to live with Fabrizio Crestani. Nonetheless, a great job by the mechanics to work all night to get that car repaired after yesterday's incident. At the moment, Gianmaria rewarding their efforts. Pola still under threat from Kang Ling. These drivers, they're all just struggling to create that clear-cut overtaking opportunity. And at this stage of the race, where you've got pit stops to come, you've still got 2/3 of the race to go, they're just not going to roll the dice and take the gamble just yet. That will come a little bit later on. Meanwhile, Enrique Chavez sets the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 39.5. So the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren going well, particularly as the fuel load begins to lighten. As Kang Ling closes up onto the tail of Nicolas Pola. Can't quite, though, sneak past, so the pair of them continue to run nose to tail. The 14th time of asking through the parabolica up to the hairpin at turn 6. And the speed trap coming just before the hairpin as Ling looks to the inside of Pola. And everybody in the field doing well in excess of 250 kilometres per hour through the speed trap, which is very quick. Essentially, it's the best part of 140 plus miles per hour. Here is the race leader, Norbert Siedler, then 2.1 seconds clear of teammate Giacomo Altoe. Enrique Chavez, though, in a little bit of clear air, trying to shake off Darren Turner, as now Fabrizio Crestani gets onto terms with Edward Cheever. And Cheever just content to let Crestani fill his mirrors. He's not going to be outpsyched by the efforts of Crestani at the moment. Fabrizio Crestani, though, of course, a former champion in the International GT Open. Knows what he needs to do, but he can't quite do it just yet. So on the brakes again into turn 2. This the 15th lap of the race, as the pit window about to open here in Hockenheim. And just to repeat, it's going to be open for 12 minutes. They're going to have 6 or 7 laps with which to deploy the strategy. I wonder if we're going to see some pit stops happening immediately. Expect that both Cheever and Crestani will stay out reasonably late into the pit window, as in now comes Christoph Lenz to pass over to Alberto Di Folco. And Lenz was in 19th place, after that coming together with Marcello Hahn. So the Raton by Target squad get to work. Also in is Luis Silva, turned over to Antonio Coimbra. They were on the AM class podium yesterday afternoon. It's the front runners winding their way towards the end of the lap. So will any of them peel in on this occasion? Neither of the Emil Frey Racing Lamborghinis do, but Enrique Chavez into the pits. There you see, at the right-hand side of the picture. So he will pass over to Martin Kodrich. That then releases Darren Turner into clear air for the first time of the day. So the Teo Martin Motorsport team, I guess, making the gamble here that if Kodrich can come out into some clear track, he might be able to get the jump. He only needs to find 2 seconds over the Emil Frey Racing Lamborghinis to be in the lead of the race. So he is into the car. Also Andres Ravia in hand over to Fran Rueda. Lots of the Pro-Am cars. Russell Ward to Indy Doncia. And here is the Ferrari of Duncan Cameron, which is about to become the Ferrari of Matt Griffin. So all go in the pit lane. And as we saw yesterday, about half the field pitting in immediately. Thomas Jaeger into the Sun Energy Mercedes. Also Onslow Cole to the SPS Automotive entry. all go in the pit lane. Also in is Marcello Hahn to hand over to Alain Kader. So all the pit stops about to be completed very early by the Teo Marti Motorsport squad. So the car's about to be released back into the race. Martin Kodrich and Nicola Di Marco out and on their ways as the race leaders come powering through once more. And Norbert Seidler continuing to lead the way, 2.1 seconds ahead of Giacomo Altoe. And Darren Turner's just set the fast lap of the race into clear air, and immediately the quickest car in the field as Matt Griffin emerges right in the middle of all of this, as does Fran Ruedas. This is going to be really tricky now for these front runners. Norbert Seidler is going to have Matt Griffin pursuing him. Giacomo Altoe is just behind Giuseppe Cipriani. And then Fran Rueda has emerged in front of Edward Cheever. So is that strategically going to force the hand of a couple of teams? In fact, Fran Rueda is alongside Fabrizio Cristani now. Just confirmation at the bottom of the picture that Marcello Hahn's picked up a 5-second penalty for that incident with Christoph Lenz up at the hairpin. More preparation. That looks like it's Michael Grenier, poised to take over from the race leader Norbert Seidler. As we approach half-race distance. 32 minutes to run. As they get speed, Mercedes in. Janine Hill to take over from John Schaffner. Now here comes Seidler. Is he going to peel towards the pits this time around? Yes, he is. So Norbert Seidler is in. That elevates Giacomo Altoe to the lead of the race. Now the big question is going to be where Seidler emerges, or where rather Michael Grenier emerges. He's to take over from Norbert Seidler relative to Martin Kodrich. Because Kodrich has just set the fastest first sector of the race so far. Of course, handicaps come into play as well, as Naji Razak will take over from Federico Leo in the Ombra Racing Lamborghini. Meanwhile, Alberto Di Folco has just set the fast lap of the race on his first flying lap in the Raton by Target Lamborghini. Di Folco, who was the pace setter, of course, in free practice on Friday. As Michael Grenier is heading down the pit lane now. So Grenier is going to emerge with a reasonably decent advantage here. Because, of course, the Chavez and Kodrich car is finishing second in the pro class yesterday. So Michael Grenier out into clear air and comfortably the foremost of those that have had their pit stops. See what sort of advantage Grenier has got in the moment over Martin Kodrich. It is 9.9 seconds, but Kodrich has just set the fastest lap of the race. A 1:38.3 is in now, comes Giacomo Altoe to pass over to Albert Costa. Now it's a 5-second longer pit stop for Costa and Altoe because they were third in their class yesterday. Than for the sister car of Seidler and Grenier. Albert Costa once he gets behind the wheel. Also in is Daniel Zampieri to pass over to Alessio Rivera. Liang into the Lamborghini in place of Gian Ria, and also Chris Froggatt in from Edward Cheever. Was leading, of course, the Pro-Am class. So pretty much everybody, with a couple of exceptions, making their pit stops now. It's the Anthony Motorsport team getting to work. So the race leader, Michael Grenier, and he's got a little bit of a buffer to play with here, because even with 28 minutes left on the clock, it is a huge ask for Kodrich to reel him in, and Albert Costa is just heading down the pit lane. We can see from our commentary box. So Costa should emerge into second position ahead of Martin Kodrich. Let's see if that proves to be the case. As we look into the background, here's Costa and here comes Kodrich. The camera angle makes that look closer than it is. And Albert Costa into second place, effectively, of those that have pitted. So that is very handy for the Emerald Frey Racing squad. Now, what do Kodrich and Costa do? Do they fight between themselves, or do they try and chase down Mikael Grenier? Now, this is the other wildcard in all this, Darren Turner, who's been flying at the wheel of the Aston Martin, to pass over to Ollie Wilkinson. And Wilkinson, by my admittedly far from brilliant maths, could well come out of the pits into second position here in the Optimum Motorsport Aston Martin. And Fabrizio Cristani, who is also still circulating, will potentially hand over to Miguel Ramos in a fairly favourable position as well. Frederick Schandorf and Kang Ling swap. Now that's important in terms of the Pro-Am class and where Schandorf emerges relative to Chris Froggatt. So here is Fabrizio Cristani, and I'll tell you what, he is cutting it a little bit finer than maybe the team would like in relation to the pit window. Got a little bit of time remaining as out of the pits now comes Ollie Wilkinson. He does feed into second position, so into second place for Ollie Wilkinson. So the order of those that have pitted then is Grenier from Wilkinson, Costa and Kodrich. So here is Cristani. Now is he going to go on for one more lap? Yes he will, because he's got until 24 minutes left on the clock. So Cristani hoping that if he stays out longer, this will give him the opportunity to jump certainly Nicola Di Marco, possibly others. He's got Tom Onslow Cole queued up right behind him in the sister car. Onslow Cole having a little bit of a look to the inside, because in the Pro-Am class, that order is currently Chris Froggatt from Frederick Schandorf, then Indy Doncher in third in the class, Jaeger in fourth, Matt Griffin in fifth, and Tom Onslow Cole sixth in the Pro-Am class. And in the Am class, it is Martin Conrad, who is still out on track and leading the way. So Onslow Cole right up behind Fabrizio Cristani. So some tantalising battles in prospect for late on in the race, but as Onslow Cole slips past Cristani, but it is beginning to already look pretty good for Mikael Grenier. As Miguel Ramos readies himself to take over from Cristani. The two SPS Mercedes run side by side, doing battle with each other. Onslow Cole sneaks past into the Sachs curve. He's got Fran Rueda just behind him. And Cristani will duck into the pits on this occasion. So the pit cycle nearly completed. Martin Conrad, the only other car that we've got due in. And then we'll be able to give something like a definitive order to things. So Miguel Ramos take over from Cristani, Alexander Raquina from Martin Conrad. Once these pit stops completed, we'll have a sense of the order heading on to the latter stages of the race. While the SPS team work on the car of Ramos, the race leader Mikael Grenier is into the Sachs curve, so Grenier should have the lead of this without too much drama. The real fight is the one that's going to come together for second position. Here is Mikael Grenier, because Ollie Wilkinson has been comprehensively caught in second place by Albert Costa, and Costa has got Martin Kodrich with him, as running a little bit wide there, Mikael Grenier. He's got Janine Hill just ahead. So there is the battle for second, and Ollie Wilkinson is going to have a fairly lengthy 24 minutes or so. It's Albert Costa, former Euro Cup champion. He's been a European Megane Trophy champion. He's one of the very best in the business as Ramos emerges just behind this train. But crucially for Ramos, ahead of Nicola Di Marco. So staying out that bit longer. Working out for Crestani. Now, Michael Grenier. Traffic, Janine Hill, he will hope, has seen him. Oh, I'm not sure she has, but she turns into the hairpin. Michael Grenier was there already. Fortunately, they avoid contact with each other. And Michael Grenier continues on his way. So he leads 6.2 seconds clear of Ollie Wilkinson. Wilkinson has got Albert Costa pushing him along. Now, what we've seen with Ollie is he is, relative to a lot of the drivers in the field, carrying a fair bit less experience, but he's been a very, very quick learner. So he will, he gets prodded along by Albert Costa. Hope that means he can do something about maybe chasing down Michael Grenier a little bit. At the same time, the main mission is just hold on to that second place, because also lurking with intent is Martin Kodric in the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren. There is the Croatian. Just looking at the battle ahead of him. He's going to let Albert Costa maybe take the fight to Wilkinson first of all. Crestani, or rather Miguel Ramos, through in fifth. Nicola Di Marco in sixth. Giatong Liang in seventh. There's Chris Froggatt in eighth. And then Tempesta Racing Ferrari leading the Pro-Am class. Ahead of Frederick Schandorf and Indy Dontje. So Michael Grenier, his lead, 5.4 seconds over Ollie Wilkinson. But Wilkinson, what can he do? The Aston Martin, Darren Turner, has put them in a very good position here. Emil Frey Racing Team watch, they would like a 1-2. And actually, as the pace has just picked up a little bit, Martin Kodric not quite able to stay with them at the moment. The Teo Martin Motorsport Team watch and confer. And so that's good news for Albert Costa, because it means he doesn't need to worry quite so much about what's going on in his mirrors and can fully focus his efforts on attacking and chasing down Ollie Wilkinson. Miguel Ramos, though, not quite able to put the pressure onto Kodric just yet. One of the things we've seen this weekend is the gaps amongst the field are so slender that to make significant inroads proving to be very challenging. But Ollie Wilkinson is taking time out of Michael Grenier under possibly threat from Albert Costa. Wilkinson is 5.1 seconds back from Grenier. He was half a second quicker than the Canadian last time through. Now, whether or not this is a case of Grenier just not needing to push any harder than absolutely necessary, there's also for Ollie Wilkinson the job of putting the lap onto Janine Hill. Hill, headlights ablaze, is currently fourth in the AM class. And the leader of the AM class is about to pass over to Giuseppe Cipriani, who is right with Alexander Raquina. So pounding down through the heat haze into turn 11, turn 8, turn 7 and 8 for Ollie Wilkinson. Albert Costa in pursuit. Then, of course, Martin Kodric. Here's the race leader, Michael Grenier. And Grenier, so far on this lap, has given away a chunk more time to Ollie Wilkinson. Shikamaru Toe and Norbert Siedler discussed the first stint. But this is not done and dusted yet. Now, whether or not Grenier is just running at a pace and he can pick it up if he needs to, or whether or not this is potentially going to open the door here for Wilkinson, we'll see. Meanwhile, Alessio Rivera into the pits now. The first challenge here for Wilkinson is to put the lap on to Janine Hill. Now, has Hill seen that Wilkinson is there? This is tricky for Ollie Wilkinson as they head into turn 1, and it leaves Wilkinson vulnerable to a challenge here from Albert Costa. Blue flags being waved at Janine Hill, who, well, Wilkinson has to roll the dice. He darts to the inside at turn 2. Hill shuts the door, or attempts to, and this now paves the way for Albert Costa to challenge Ollie Wilkinson, and Wilkinson unable to take advantage through the traffic. It means he's going to slip a little bit further adrift of Michael Grenier. But the next corner is the critical one for Wilkinson. This is where Albert Costa would be at his most opportunistic and dangerous to try and challenge the Aston Martin. It's also where Wilkinson just needs to get back into his rhythm, not drive defensively, get back to what he was doing a lap ago. But Costa was about to challenge Ollie Wilkinson there as they head down towards turn 7. And here he comes! Oh, onto the grass for Albert Costa as Wilkinson slammed the door shut in his face. Now this is racing as it brings Martin Kodrich into the mix as Wilkinson runs wide at turn 8. And so Costa does go through into second. Wilkinson slips to third. And Kodrich can't quite take advantage. And that all came from Wilkinson just having to gamble a little bit, putting the lap on Janine Hill in an inopportune place. And a lap ago, Wilkinson was eating into Michael Grenier's lead. Now he's down to third, and it's Albert Costa who has got a choice to make whether or not he pursues his teammate. And Wilkinson, his mirrors immediately filled with the car of Martin Kodrich. So across the line they go. Albert Costa into clear air. What can he do? Will he chase down Michael Grenier? Here's another look at it then. Wilkinson just slithered wide at turn 8, having shut the door at turn 7. And Albert Costa, who's rarely without a grin, I'd imagine would have quite a big one underneath his helmet just now. Enrique Chavez, just the excitement. Could Kodrich take an advantage? Meanwhile, we're in car with Chris Froggatt. And Froggatt still leading the Pro-Am class. And that looks like a move that he made on Jiatong Liang. It's now Wilkinson under pressure from Martin Kodrich. Albert Costa released and in pursuit of his teammate. Miguel Ramos is trying to join into this battle as well. And Ramos, last time around, was a good second or so quicker. Look at the pace that Albert Costa's been able to establish immediately now that he is out into the open. And for Ollie Wilkinson, it was all going so well, but Costa forced him to defend into the hairpin. And that set him up then for a slightly slower run towards turn 7. And this is the challenge on the circuit like Hockenheim. You've got to play the long game. Think several corners ahead as the gap from Grenier to Costa is down to 5 seconds. Albert Costa was 0.8 of a second quicker than Michael Grenier last time around. And whilst the Emil Frey Racing team will, I'm sure, be saying to their drivers, don't collide with each other, beyond that, it's far too early in the season for anything like team orders to come into play, you would imagine. Look at Costa absolutely flying through turn 1. Car bouncing on the suspension. The same for Wilkinson and Kodrich. Martin Kodrich still right with Ollie Wilkinson. Trying to force Wilkinson out of his rhythm, trying to see if he can move up into third place. For Ollie Wilkinson, it's a chance to get his first podium in the GT Open in the Aston Martin. As he gets back into his rhythm, that just makes it a little bit harder for Martin Kodrich. Race leader, Michael Grenier, continues to be pursued by Albert Costa. And Grenier into turn 15 now, carrying the momentum and the steering lock into 16. Out of the final corner, he accelerates across the line. Now it's a 1 minute 39.3 for Michael Grenier. That car's best lap of the race. The problem for Grenier, so it was a 1:39.0 for Albert Costa. So Costa a little bit closer, not quite the rate of capture that was a lap ago. Meanwhile, it is all go in the Pro-Am class because Indy Doncia has got Jiatong Liang between himself and the class leader Chris Froggatt. So Froggatt is being chased by this man, the bright yellow HTP Motorsport Mercedes. First challenge for Doncia, though, is to move clear of Jiatong Liang. But we saw that the Dutchman was very, very rapid in yesterday afternoon's race. Lights ablaze in the Mercedes as they accelerate on towards turn 5. And is Doncia going to look for the move into the hairpin? Liang just covers the middle of the road. Looks to get the car stopped. Doncia takes the wide entry, tries for the switchback as Froggatt a little bit slow out of the hairpin. Indy Doncia bobs and weaves behind Liang. Now challenges the outside at turn 7. That will give the inside line for turn 8. And that is a very well-judged move from Indy Doncia. He moves up into 8th overall, 2nd in the Pro-Am class, and now in pursuit of Froggatt for the lead of the Pro-Am class. There is the Tempesta Racing Ferrari. The HTP Winward Racing Mercedes in hot pursuit. Meanwhile, adventures for Alberto Di Folco. Kicking up the dust on the way through turn 11. So at the front of the field, meanwhile, Albert Costa now just 4 seconds back from Michael Grenier. Here's another look at the manoeuvre. Around the outside, brave stuff. As again, Martin Kodrich pursues Ollie Wilkinson out of turns 3 and 4 into the parabolic of turn at 5. Up towards the hairpin at turn 6. Through the speed trap. They go. And on the brakes and around the hairpin. Oxford Motorsport. They're just telling Ollie Wilkinson that there's possibly 8 laps to go, I think, as they're considering, I guess, their options at the moment. There's not really much they can say to Wilkinson as he continues to be chased by Martin Kodrich at the front of the field. Albert Costa is now 3.6 seconds adrift of teammate Michael Grenier, and Costa has got just enough time, I would imagine, to make this fairly interesting between the Emil Frey Racing, the Emil Frey Racing stable. Also in full battle is the fight for the Pro-Am class, as here is the battle for 3rd position. Miguel Ramos has really brought himself into this scrap as well. And Ollie Wilkinson running in the 1 minute 39.8 second bracket. Kodrich a little bit quicker than that, as again Wilkinson has to defend through turn 2. But the Aston Martin good in a straight line. But this is the best opportunity that Kodrich has had, certainly that we have seen on the run down the back stretch of the circuit. And is there going to be an opportunity to challenge? Maybe. Martin Kodrich, he forces Wilkinson to take the tight defensive line on the way in. Can't quite play that into the switchback on the way out. Meanwhile, Thomas Jaeger into the pit lane in the Sun Energy Mercedes. As again, all over Wilkinson now is Kodrich. Wilkinson to the inside line at turn 8. Kodrich to the outside, and he's going to try and go through. Swoops the outside, he slithers wide. He's now vulnerable to a challenge from Miguel Ramos, is Martin Kodrich. Ramos might sweep past as they head down towards turn 11. The SPS Mercedes alongside the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren, and through goes Ramos up into 4th position. And Kodrich, who was within a whisker of 3rd place a couple of corners ago, slips down to 5th. And it's now Miguel Ramos who is released to chase Ollie Wilkinson. battles throughout the field really coming alive in the latter stages. The fight for the Pro-Am class is incredibly close as well. They're just going past the commentary box. And that's mainly because Froggatt and Doncher were bottled up behind Janine Hill, who's just moved aside. Now here's another look at it. Kodrich, he rolls the dice, he looks to the outside at turn 8, gambling that as the track moves back to the right, that will leave him to the inside line. He just goes in too hot, slithers wide, has to then get on the brakes into turns 9 and 10, and that is the opportunity that Miguel Ramos needed to then have the inside line for turn 11. And Miguel Ramos using all of his experience to very good effect. Meanwhile, it is side by side in the Pro-Am class. Lindy Doncher to the inside of Chris Froggatt as they head on towards the hairpin. Froggatt trying to tough it out. So we go in kart. Doncher then has got the inside line for the hairpin. Froggatt might be able to get the switch back, depending on what the Mercedes does. Oh, that's desperately close. And it may just work here for Froggatt. But Doncher moves across, covers the line. On appear for now to have secured the Pro-Am class lead. And they've got Frederick Scharndorf as well right behind them. Froggatt breaks a little bit deeply into turn 8, very nearly into the back of the Mercedes. Fortunately not. Rides the curbs out of turn 10 on towards 11. There is Nicola Di Marco in 6th place in the Team Lazarus Lamborghini. We've not seen masses of Nicola Di Marco. Then it's the scrap for 7th. Now where's Froggatt? He's slipped behind Frederick Scharndorf. So Chris Froggatt, I think he had a moment at turn 11 because there's dust over there. And he now drops to 3rd place in the Pro-Am class. And the bad news for Froggatt, it might become even more than that, because in the background there you see him is the green and white Ferrari of Matt Griffin. Headlights ablaze, chasing him down. So all change in the Pro-Am class. In the AM class, Alexander Raquina still leads it from Giuseppe Cipriani, with Antonio Coimbra 3rd. But what about the lead of the race? Well, Albert Costa is now just 1.9 seconds adrift of Michael Grenier, with 6 minutes and 20 seconds left in the race. Here we are then, the Emil Frey Racing teammates closing up on each other. Is this another look then at what happened between Froggatt and Doncher? And Froggatt almost stable, but not quite. In kart, see the overlap playing through, millimetres between them. Not quite enough for Froggatt to get past. So Wilkinson now starting to come under a little bit of pressure as well from Miguel Ramos. So gaps throughout the field beginning to close late on, possibly as drivers got past the best of their tyres. Now this is what happened to Froggatt turn 11. Just understeers out wide, through the gravel, stones, 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 bump, 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 but rejoins in 3rd in the class. So Albert Costa, 2nd place in pursuit of teammate Michael Grenier for the race win. 5 minutes to run here in Hockenheim. Both cars looking for their 2nd win of the campaign. Which one will it be? Will it be either of them, of course, if they get a little bit too close for company? But Michael Grenier currently holds the advantage. He is out front. Albert Costa just 1.2 seconds back. And the analysis of the race to capture that last lap from Costa, almost a second quicker than Michael Grenier. And the worry for Grenier is that his best lap is half a second slower than Albert Costa's best lap. It's going to come down, of course, to it's one thing to catch the car in front, quite another to find your way past it. And Costa starting to get a little bit into the turbulent air behind his teammate as well. Plus, also, you'll know the risk of rolling the dice with a last gasp manoeuvre on the teammate. So across the line they run, and the gap 1.3 seconds that last lap. Albert Costa only a tenth quicker than Michael Grenier, and at a gap of 1.3 seconds, that's probably enough not to overly concern the Canadian. 3.5 minutes to go, so probably going to have 2 more laps at the end of this one. Still Ollie Wilkinson fending off Miguel Ramos in the fight for 3rd and 4th, as the leaders close up on the brakes. Albert Costa getting ever nearer to Michael Grenier, just filling his mirrors. The gap now down to 1.1 seconds. And last time around for Michael Grenier, it was a slight elevation. He was 0.4 quicker than he had been on the previous lap. Here, meanwhile, there's Matt Griffin to the inside of Jiatong Liang. Now, that's bad news for Chris Froggatt, because it means there's nothing but clear air between himself and Griffin in the fight for 3rd in the Pro-Am class. Meanwhile, the race leaders into the Sachs curve. 2 laps to go, so just over 9 kilometres of racing. Who is it who is going to claim victory in the 4th race of the year? Albert Costa has been relentlessly reeling in Michael Grenier through the second half of the race. As they accelerate through, Grenier and Costa, the gap between them down to 0.7 of a second. Through turn 1, and Costa getting ever closer to Michael Grenier. Jacques Toe might not have any nails left at the end of this race, because Costa is now really within biting distance. Is he going to make the move into the hairpin? That is the most clear-cut of the overtaking opportunities. He's going to be in the slipstream this time behind Michael Grenier. The gap between them was 0.4 of a second as they came out onto the back stretch. Is Grenier, of course, going to be phased into moving offline? Costa closes up behind him. The Emil Frey Racing Lamborghinis in formation, 1st and 2nd overall. Albert Costa chasing Michael Grenier. 1.5 laps to go through turn 7. On the brakes into turn 8. And Costa ready to pounce. He just lost a little bit of ground though in turn 8. Car bouncing a little bit under braking pressure. So he's got some more ground to make up as they swing through turn 11 on towards the Sachs curve. Now just over a lap to run. Michael Grenier has got just that couple of tenths of a second buffer over Albert Costa. Is it going to be enough? Through the brace of right-handers that will complete their 35th lap of the race. Fingers crossed for Norbert Seidler. As Albert Costa pursues Michael Grenier into turn 1. The opportunity, the best opportunity, is going to be into the hairpin, and that is what Costa is setting up for. He gets a good sprint out of the first corner, up towards turn 2. Oh, he thinks about it, and Costa's overcooked it. Just a little bit too hot on the brakes into turn 2, and Costa was in 2 minds whether to surprise Grenier, and as a result, Michael Grenier has got the buffer, as Albert Costa just outbraked himself. And Michael Grenier is now well set for victory. There's no way that Albert Costa is going to close that gap down between now and the checkered flag. He had one roll of the dice, and it didn't quite pay off. So Michael Grenier swoops through turn 7. The battle for 3rd is still very live between Ramos and Wilkinson, as Michael Grenier has just got a couple of corners to run now out of turn 10. Turn 11 awaits us. Through the right-hander for Michael Grenier, and he and Norbert Seidler are looking set for their 2nd victory of the 2019 season. Through the Sachs curve they go. Just the brace of right-handers remain. Costa has tried to close up through the last lap, but it's to no avail as Michael Grenier accelerates out of the final corner. It's going to be a 1-2 for Emil Frey Racing. Michael Grenier and Norbert Siedler win in Hockenheim from Albert Costa and Giacomo Altoe. And in third place, it is going to be Ollie Wilkinson and Darren Turner for Optimum Motorsport, just ahead of Miguel Ramos and Martin Kodrich. And in the Pro-Am class, victory for Inji Doncher and Russell Ward, with Matt Griffin having got the jump on Chris Froggatt on the last lap to take third in the Pro-Am class behind Frederick Schandorf. So a thrilling end to the race here in Hockenheim. Spectacular stuff all the way through the field. And that was the moment for Albert Costa. If he'd stayed in line, he'd have possibly clattered into his teammate. He had to take evasive action. Now here is Froggatt running wide. At that point, he's already been passed by Matt Griffin, but he also lost out to Jiatong Liang. But not quite. Tom Onslow Cole. Onslow Cole slithered off wide. So a spectacular finish to the race, and Michael Grenier absorbing that pressure late on, as did Ollie Wilkinson, finishing third place. So Norbert Siedler and Michael Grenier, they took pole position by the tiniest of margins, and they have, barring the pit stops, led lights to flag, but it doesn't really, to give the race that narrative, really undersells what happened, because it was a lot more entertaining than that. And Michael Grenier can enjoy the moment as he heads back round to the pits. So look then at the final classification. Victory for Norbert Siedler and Michael Grenier, and Emil Frey Racing 1-2 ahead of Albert Costa and Giacomo Altoe. Optimum Motorsport, Ollie Wilkinson and Darren Turner on the podium, ahead of Miguel Ramos and Fabrizio Cristani. Martin Kodrich and Enrique Chavez in fifth, ahead of Nicola DeMarco and Nicholas Pola. Russell Ward and Indy Doncher winning the Pro-Am class from Kang Ling and Frederick Schandorf, and then Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin snatching the final spot in the Pro-Am podium late on. In the Am class, Raquina and Conrad taking victory in the HTP Motorsport Mercedes, ahead of Giuseppe Cipriani and Antonio Coimbra and Luis Silva. Fortunately, we lost Thomas Jaeger and Alessio Rivera along the way. So in terms of the championship then, Costa and Altoe lead it 7 points clear of Grenier and Siedler, with Enrique Chavez and Martin Kodrich up into third in the points. So all go for the celebrations in Parc Ferme. Michael Grenier out of the car, congratulated by Norbert Siedler. Over to enjoy the congratulations of the Emil Frey Racing team.
All right, feel good?
Delighted Ollie Wilkinson and Darren Turner with third position. So this is the moment for Michael Grenier taking the checkered flag, seeing the team over the pit wall in celebration. And the gap at the line just shy of 0.7 of a second. A moment to savour for the Emil Frey Racing team. They qualified 1-2, they have finished 1-2.
Track limit warning, but I only got one. Okay. So what do? You push for 3 tenths and you get the track limit?
So we will hear from our race winners in a couple of moments' time. I'm sure they will have lots to say. A very hard-fought race, a lot of pressure late on from Albert Costa.
Michael Grenier, Norbert Siedler, win in Hockenheim, the second of the season, and basically from pole to checkered flag. And you had a tremendous start, Norbert.
Yeah, it was great. Car was really good the first 3-4 laps. I could pull away like 3 seconds, and then I kept the gap. Pit stop, everything went well, and then Mick jumped in, and at the end we won again. And thanks to the team, they did a brilliant job. P1, P2. It's a great weekend for us.
Michael, you had to sweat a little bit in the second stint to keep everyone at bay, and especially your teammate in the final lap.
Yeah, a bit disappointed with my pace, but I had early in my stint my last warning for track limit, which I didn't expect. So then I was a bit scared to get a penalty. Obviously, we had rules in the team to stay first and second like this, so I wasn't too nervous. But still, I wish I had a bit more pace.
Well done, guys. Podium now.
Thank you.
As the lights changed, it was Norbert Siedler who led away as the pack charged towards turn 1. Jacques Toé and Darren Turner slotting in behind him. Everybody was cleanly through the first couple of turns as Marcello Hahn came together with Christoph Lenz. That earned Hahn a penalty for later on in the race. At the front of the field, though, it was Siedler was trying to stretch the field as there was some great dicing going on behind. Ollie Wilkinson in the thick of the action with Albert Costa late on. That was enough to elevate Costa into second place and then set off in pursuit of his teammate as then Wilkinson came under real pressure from Martin Kodrich. Kodrich challenging to the outside at turn 8, and as he couldn't quite execute the manoeuvre, rejoined, but slowly, and that allowed Miguel Ramos to slip past into 4th position. Meanwhile, Chris Froggatt was in the thick of the action in the Pro-Am class until that trip across the gravel allowed Indy Doncia to take a definitive lead in the class, as Matt Griffin then scythed through to eventually take 3rd place on the Pro-Am podium. Late on, Albert Costa was in constant pursuit of Michael Grenier, but Grenier and Siedler taking their second victory of the season, a lights to flag win ahead of Costa and Altoe to make it an Emil Racing 1-2. So up to the 3rd step of the podium for Darren Turner and Ollie Wilkinson in the Optima Motorsport Aston Martin. Giacomo Altoe and Albert Costa runners-up. Albert Costa almost there on the last lap of the race, but Michael Grenier and Norbert Siedler taking the victory in Hockenheim. And they don't have long to ponder the result of today, because we will be back in 2 weeks' time at Spa-Francorchamps. Right now, Emil Racing can enjoy the spoils of victory on the Hockenheim rostrum. The Swiss national anthem in honour of Emil Racing as we move to the Laurent Dumouset from Michelin presenting the trophy to Ollie Wilkinson and Darren Turner. Really fine drive from both of them for that third place. Might have been a little bit more, but for that moment where Wilkinson got caught behind Janine Hill. Max Janssen from Michelin presenting the runners-up trophies to Costa and Altoe. And then Tristan Brandt from the Opus restaurant, 2 Michelin stars, presents the winners' trophies to Michael Grenier and Norbert Seidler. And he also does the honour with the winning trophy to Emil Frey Racing. So great weekend of action here in Hockenheim. We are back in 2 weeks' time with the challenge of the Spa-Francorchamps circuit, always one of the highlights of the season. So until then, it's goodbye from Germany. So on to the Pro-Am podium, and third place to Matt Griffin and Duncan Cameron for Spirit of Race Ferrari. Runners-up, Frederick Schandorf and Kang Ling for Vincenzo Sospiri Racing. And HTP Racing, HTP Motorsport Winwood Racing, the winners for Russell Ward and Indy Doncia. Laurent Dumassé again doing the honours with the third place trophy. Max Janssen once more for the runners-up trophy. Very solid race for the Vincenzo Sospiri Racing pairing. And then Tristan Brandt to the Pro-Am class winners, Russell Ward and Indy Doncia. Great weekend for them. And a superb drive to finish in 7th place overall. And the Pro-Am Championship is going to be equally close throughout the course of the year as the main championship. And the drivers celebrating with the champagne at the end of a long weekend of racing. Cameron and Griffin, the only pairing, well, actually, Anne Ward and Doncia have made it to the podium in both races. So all smiles on the Pro-Am podium. And then we will have the Am class rostrum. And again, HTP Motorsport ready to celebrate in the pit lane. Because in the Am class, we have in third place Antonio Coimbra and Luis Silva in the Sports and New Mercedes. Runner-up for Antonelli Motorsport, having done the whole race single-handedly, is Giuseppe Cipriani, with then Martin Conrad and Alexander Raquina. Once more, victorious in the Am class. So Antonio Coimbra and Luis Silva to the third step of the podium. Another successful weekend for them. Giuseppe Cipriani had a disappointing race yesterday for Antonelli Motorsport. And again, victorious in the AM class, Martin Conrad and Alexander Fraquina for HTP Motorsport. And again, Laura Dumaset with the trophies. The AM class this year, again, shaping up to be very interesting. Fraquina and Conrad having an excellent weekend here in Hockenheim. But Spa-Francorchamps in 2 weeks' time. A different challenge, a high-speed circuit, a track that has not brought this pairing actually good luck at all over the past couple of years. A big accident 2 years ago. They didn't even race last year due to driver illness, so they will be hoping that Spa brings better luck next time. But for now, they celebrate a great weekend in Hockenheim. We've had a lot of fun this weekend here in Germany for the International GT Open. Hope you've enjoyed it as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. So as the driver's about to pop the champagne corks, it means it's time to say thank you very much for joining us in Germany this weekend. We will see you in Spa in 2 weeks' time.
Time for champagne.